Dr. Mike LeNoir, and this is the Wellness Watch. Welcome to the Wellness Watch. Our special guest today is Dr. Paula Van, a nurse, a healer, a poet. Dr. Van is what we call a super nurse. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in nursing from the University of San Francisco. She earned a master's degree in nursing, a doctorate of philosophy in nursing, and a postdoctoral fellowship from the University of California. She's given herself not only to the education of nurses, but also she's given herself to the community. Dr. Van, welcome to our program.
And thank you for having me, Dr. LeNoir.
You know, one of the things that people must recognize is the role of nursing in our healthcare system. I think they're the most important cog. Certainly as a doctor, I have nothing but admiration for the role of nursing and how difficult and stressful it can be. Tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a nurse.
Sure. I've known that I wanted to be a nurse since I was 10, and I love telling this story. My grandmother lived with us, and she had a stroke and was hospitalized, and I wanted to go and see her. And in the 60s, children weren't allowed in the hospitals. And so I begged and begged and begged, and the nurse approved for me to come and see my grandma. But standing in the doorway of the ward where she was back in the 60s, of course, there were wards. And I watched the nurse as she cared for my grandma. I didn't know, that it was a nurse, but I knew this was someone who was gentle with my grandma. My grandma was in a coma. She still talked to her. She turned her gently. And I just felt, when I am an adult, when I grow up, this is what I want to do, care for people in that special way. So I have been a nurse for almost 50 years now, and I would make the same decision again.
Tell us a little bit about some of the struggles and barriers you had to overcome as a Black nursing student, some of the barriers you faced becoming a nurse.
Absolutely. So I came to nursing school with a drive. I came to nursing school because someone mentored me. It was one of the nuns spoke to the universities for me, of course, Catholic universities. And in nursing school, I came with a drive that I not received, but nurtured from my parents. They had this strong work ethic. And yes, in nursing school, I came across a lot of challenges. And I'm going to give you an example. I was in my pediatric rotation, getting A's on all my exams, showing up early for the clinical rotation, doing my best. And the instructor gave me a B+. Okay. And I'm a 20-year-old person of color in this predominantly white cohort of nursing students. And I made an appointment with her and I spoke up. And I said, can you please explain to me why I earned a B+ when I told you I aced all my exams and I was always in clinical. And she didn't have an answer. I ended up with an A-, so there was kind of a negotiation. But also, I was an administrator very early in my career. Matter of fact, I was 27 and the nurse executive for a major medical center. And I was so oblivious to the racism around me because I was determined to do the best job I could. And I would not allow the microaggressions or anything to stop me from doing the best job that I can do. I'll tell you, most recently in academia, I've experienced many challenges until I spoke up for myself. And that's the theme. Even when one of my managers was, let's say, not so kind to me, I said to her boss, I'd like to have a meeting. We need to talk about this because I will not allow myself to experience this in this workplace. And yeah, it's a bold move because that's my manager. She recommends my raises. But in every case, it's important for me to speak up for myself. And I am a true believer of the adage, people only treat you the way you allow them to treat you. And
Do you,
so,
do you think that young people who want to become nurses now, young Black people, are facing some of the same things that you faced?
absolutely, there's no question. And I want to tell you or share with you some of the challenges. And so it begins in high school and the admission process. You're required to have a strong science and math and writing background because nursing school is quite rigorous in all those areas. Those subjects form the foundation for a successful nursing school journey. And so if young Black students, male and female, tend not to be mentored to take the sciences, to take the math, to really focus on writing. And so when it's time to apply for nursing school, they tend not to be prepared or ready. Or if they get into nursing school, it's the same challenge. So that's, it starts from high school. And then during the application process, um, that narrative that you write about why you want to become a nurse is very critical because your application is representing you to the institution. And so our African American males and females don't tend to be mentored in that way as well. And then getting into nursing school, there tend to be very few other students that look like you or me, and so we may be excluded from study groups. There may be examples given during class that are offensive to us. So it's just a continual struggle. The other is that patients may say, I don't want that African American student taking care of me. So these are things that happened 50 years ago, and these are things that are happening today.
What would you say to young people who are facing this situation? What was obviously the thing was you had to speak up. What are some of the other things that they need to know about dealing with, which even in this day and age is
Mhm,
obvious discrimination in front
mhm.
of them?
Okay. And so it's a great question, Dr. LeNoir, because I really believe, and I'm going from my experience and how I've mentored other African American students and students of color, that it first starts with yourself. You have to believe in yourself. You have to know that you are just as qualified, just as good as anyone else pursuing a nursing career or in a nursing career. The other thing that was very, very instrumental to me is having a mentor. Some of them volunteered to be my mentor because they saw my drive. Others I sought out. And I'm here to say that fortunately or unfortunately, that when I look at my mentors, they were none of them were African American, and so I'm just asking you to reach out to mentors of all races, of all areas of specialty, and they don't necessarily have to be a nurse. They may be someone who majors in English. It may be a business person, but reach out to mentors that will help you along the way and navigate and socialize you to being a student, because there are peer mentors, or being a professional working in healthcare, working in business, or working in whichever field you choose.
One of the things that we see now, and I'm sure one of the areas where I think of the many areas where you excel, is in your ability to handle so many different pieces of your life in a fairly organized and effective way. We'll get to that as we go along in our discussion, but I think there are a lot of healthcare people out there who have been working through this pandemic and don't recognize the impact that it has on them. I think you told us a story about your family and how you faced a similar situation. Talk to us a little bit about what is commonly called passion fatigue.
Mhm, mhm. Absolutely. So let me give a little context for the audience, especially if you're not in the nursing profession. Um, this pandemic, we started in 2020, so we're 2.5, yeah, over 2.5 years into it. And during the pandemic, the amount of death and the nature of the deaths that nurses experienced and witnessed and cared for patients and families during this time, that amount of death and the nature of death was just totally unusual, unprecedented. And so I'll give you an example. Um, and these are stories that nurses have told me. I'm in education. So um, these are stories that practicing nurses have told me. And they could be caring for a patient who they checked on, took the vital signs and made them comfortable and left them in the room, either talking on the phone or laughing at something on TV, and then they come back for their next check, which might be just an hour later, and the same patient had passed away. And so when you have this sudden death and the numbers of deaths, it's really exhausting emotionally and physically. The other thing that happened during the pandemic is that nurses would go to work preceded by fear. So you're driving to work or walking to work or taking public transportation to work and thinking about the shift ahead. And typically the focus is on, how am I going to contribute? Who are going to be my patients today? But instead, this overarching fear of their own death or being infected and infecting their family or their children. At the beginning of the pandemic, there was inadequate protective physical equipment. And there were very long hours because there were so many patients. And as we think, oh, the pandemic's over, well, there is a surge that's predicted for the fall of 2022. But in the meantime, we have an unprecedented number of seriously ill patients because of delays in surgery, diagnostic tests such as mammograms. And so nurses are caring for more patients right now who are sicker.
Now, you told us in preparing for this interview a story about your brother and how he had an impact on how you saw your life and how you moved in a certain direction. Could you share that with us?
Yeah. My brother Michael, um, this was back in 2014, my younger brother, and he had acute illness and ended up in a coma. And he was in a coma for 6 days. And he was hanging on by the thread of his life when he was found in his apartment and taken to the hospital. Um, but one day, I was coming to the intensive care unit to the hospital to see him, and I expected him to be in a coma. And I rounded the corner into his room, and he was sitting up in the bed. And I said, "Welcome back." And he said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You've been in a coma for 6 days." And he says, "Oh, I don't believe you." I said, "Well, what year is it?" And he says, "It's 2004." And it was actually 2014. But one of the things that he said very quickly or soon into our greeting was, "Are you working the same way that you've been working? And if you have, you've become your work." And that was quite shocking and stinging to me, even though I know he said it in love. And then I reflected that, there were family that came because we believed he was not going to make it, but their family that came, and I didn't know the new husbands. I didn't know the new babies because I didn't go to the baby showers or the weddings or the bridal showers because I was working. And it was that day in 2014, I'm almost thinking it was in July, that I made the decision to change my life.
Yeah, and I think that in our conversations and reflecting upon that moment, you've made some major changes. We don't really have the time we should to discuss exactly all of the things that you've done to do that. But in general, what has been your philosophy since that conversation?
I practice meditation. I practice mindfulness. I take time out to have quiet time every day. I walk. And I think one of the major things is I focus on gratitude. So I have a gratitude journal that I write in every day. And by meditating and being mindful, that's being in the moment, not worrying about the past, not worrying about the future, I find that I have more resilience or an ability to recover when I get the gut punch. Okay. And so I don't sweat the small stuff. And that's all about calming the mind and focusing on the present moment.
Yeah, I know I've always been described as a person who comes to go. That means when I'm in the moment, I'm thinking about the next moment or the
Mhm.
previous moment. And I recognize that over the years and have made some changes. But you've used a variety of different techniques to do that. I think that one of the things that is important for people who are in these professions is to understand that they are stressed too.
Mhm.
And if you find yourself, as I had one day, just sitting in a chair, had so many things to do, I couldn't figure out which one
Mhm.
to do. And that's, I think, was the moment that I decided, hey, I needed to make some changes. And I think certainly you have certainly been doing that. You're not just an educator, you're kind of a healer. And I think that that makes a big difference. And you do some healing techniques, don't you? As far as teaching people how to engage these techniques or engage these moments more effectively.
Yes. Yes, I do. I have a number of things I'm trained in, but one of them is Reiki. I'm a Reiki master. It's Reiki. It's a Japanese practice of stress reduction and healing. I teach meditation, mindfulness, and even to my students. But one of the things that has come about, Dr. LeNoir mentioned healing. And I come from a line of healers. I'm from Central America. And so I grew up with ancestors who were healers and used natural approaches to for our symptoms or conditions that we have. But one of the things that happened along with that, my brothers mentioned to me and shaking me up and making me take better care of myself, um, I started opening my heart through meditation and mindfulness and letting out the traumas that I had earlier in life. And it was back in 2019, under some guidance, that I did this. And I started writing poetry, healing poetry, using my life as an example of how to heal a myriad of conditions. And I want to tell you that I know that these poems are coming through me. It's not something that I'm creating because before this, I didn't read poetry, I didn't like poetry, and I didn't own any poetry books. So I have a book of 100 poems that came through me, came to my awareness. I published back in September 2020. So it's been almost a year. And oh, no, it has been a year. And what's happened as a result of that publication is that doors are really open and enhance my healing opportunities. And so I've been presenting. I also have a live stream show on blackdoctor.org, this platform. And I've been invited to many speaking engagements to speak to large number of nurses in various healthcare systems. Yeah.
Paulina, would you like to read one of your poems?
I sure would. Thank you.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask you.
I'm going to.
Okay, you pull one up, and then I'll ask you if you'd be kind enough to read us a couple of your poems.
Okay. All right. So would you like me to do it? Oh, not now?
Okay. No, right now, yeah. But I want to introduce. All right, so I'm going to remove you from the screen in a second. So, we can't miss this opportunity. Dr. Van, would you mind reading us a couple of your poems? Let me say it again. Well, we certainly don't want to miss this opportunity. You as a poet, would you mind sharing some of your poems with our audience?
It will be my honor and pleasure. And the book is titled Regala Healing. And I'm going to read one. I've been talking about caring for myself, and this is one that came to my awareness. It's called Caring for Myself. And there may be some of you out there who have the book. It's on page 129 of the physical book. I'm caring for myself in a new way. I'm caring for myself, and only I have a say. I'm caring for myself, living in harmony. I'm caring for myself, eliminating monotony. I'm caring for myself, realizing my worth. I'm caring for myself, cherishing my time on earth. I'm caring for myself, humbled by blessings. I'm caring for myself with gratitude while progressing. I'm caring for myself, garnering quiet time. I'm caring for myself and feeling miraculously divine. The next one, would you like me to read one more?
Yes, of course.
Okay. I talked about being in the moment, and this one is called In This Moment, and it's on page 41 in the physical book. In this moment, I reflect on my life. In this moment, everything is all right. In this moment, something's rising within. In this moment, it's everywhere I've been. In this moment, I feel an embrace. In this moment, it's all about God's grace.
Well, that's magnificent. I mean, it's interesting that you have chosen poetry as a way to express yourself. Because usually poets, are start very early in their careers, and I think this is really important for people to see the versatility that you display in not only your life and your career. And so I'm going to put up on the screen for a minute the information that you have. This Dr. Paula Van, her website is listed here. The name of the book is Regala Healing. And I think from the response, I think this is something that those of you who have heard her speak would be very much pleased with, interested in, and it would have some impact on how you are dealing with some of the stresses that she acknowledges. So, Dr. Van, this is really quite a pleasure. And I want you to tell people the name of your show again and how they can get your book.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. LeNoir. So the name of my show is The Poetry of Healing, And it's live stream on blackdoctor.org on Facebook, and also on the blackdoctor.org YouTube channel and my YouTube channel, which is entitled Regala Healing. If you go to my website, or when you go to my website, I'm putting that in the universe. When you go to my website, there are many, many resources for you. You can access my previous shows, the videos. You can access the link to buy the physical book, and the ebook is on Amazon.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Van. Well, we appreciate you, and we hope that you will come back to talk to us again in more detail about some of the experiences you've had and some of the techniques that you use. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Dr. LeNoir.